All right, hello, all of you ROI Podcast listeners. Before we start today's show, I'm going to ask you all a question. Do you see shopping for your healthcare services similar to the way you see shopping for something like your groceries or something like that? Do you feel like you have options when you're searching for healthcare? And if you do have options, do you understand them? That's what our guest, Deb Gordon, who's conducted research on healthcare consumerism, will be talking with us about today. Let's do it. All right, everybody, we are back. Welcome to the ROI Podcast. It is a great day here at the Kelley School of Business on the IUPOI campus in downtown Indianapolis. Starting to get a little chilly. The fall is in the air. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, Shane Simmons, and Phil Powell is here with me, who is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs here at the Kelley School. Phil, how are you doing?
Doing well, Shane. Ready to talk about healthcare.
Let's do it. So today we've got a topic, you mentioned it, Phil, it touches every single one of us. We're talking about healthcare, as you mentioned. And here at the Kelley School, we've really been spreading awareness of the changes that are happening in healthcare, and in particular, how physicians can play a vital role in that. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, Phil?
Physicians drive 80% of the resource allocation decisions in healthcare. At the Kelley School, we want to empower physicians with business knowledge to make really good decisions, not only in terms of good use of resources, but also what's best for the patient. That's why we offer a physician MBA program here on the IUPOI campus, which attracts physicians from all over the nation. But this is a system that needs fixing. It represents 20% of the U.S. economy. If we can just fix a fraction of that, there's going to be a huge return back to everybody in the U.S.
Yeah, well said, Phil. And I think that really sets the platform for where we're at today. And from a consumer standpoint, you mentioned it, what's best for the patient. And here's Deb Gordon, who comments on that. All right, everybody, we are back. One of us, we're talking it, Phil, it touches every single a topic you mentioned. So today we've got, let's do it.
Ready to talk about healthcare. Doing well, Shane.
Cool. Phil, how are you doing?
Empower physicians. At the Kelley School, we want healthcare. Resource allocation decisions in health. 80% of the resource. Physicians drive 80. You know, Shane.
About that a little bit, Phil. Vital role in that. Why don't you talk about physicians can play a particular how physicians and in particular that are happening in healthcare awareness of the change. We've really been spreading, and here at the Kelley School about healthcare, as you mentioned, academic programs here at the Kelley School. Associate Dean of Academic
the U.S.
Yeah.
To everybody, and there's going to be a huge return back. A fraction of that, if we can just fix of the U.S. economy, 20% represents fixing. But this is a system that needs the nation. Physicians from all over the campus, which attract a program here on the IUPOI. That's why we offer a physician MBA. It's best for the patient. That's resources, but also in terms of good use of resources, not only in terms to make really good decisions with business knowledge.
Phil, it touches every single one of us.
One of Deb's analogies she uses to illustrate consumer-directed healthcare is to compare healthcare to grocery shopping. That if we were just shopping for healthcare services,
really sets the platform
like we shop for groceries,
Phil, how are you doing?
The system would fix itself. You know, Shane, and there's some power in that simple illustration.
On the surface, it's kind of funny to think about. So today we've got a topic you mentioned here with me, different labels and things arranged by certain categories. It just seems like a funny concept at first.
It does, and we think of healthcare as so complex. Maybe to fix it, we need to simplify the way we see it.
Physicians can play a vital role in that. Why don't you talk about...
There's going to be a huge return back to everybody in the U.S.
Yeah. Associate Dean of Academic Programs here at the Kelley School. About healthcare, as you mentioned. About that a little bit, Phil. Starting to get a little chilly in downtown Indianapolis. Let's do it. With us about today. We'll be talking with on healthcare consumer Gordon, who's conducted research. That's what our guest, Deb, understand them.
With business knowledge to make really good decisions, not only in terms of good use of resources, but also what's best for the patient. That's why we offer. But Deb says people are already starting to do their research and shop around. Fixing. It represents 20% of the U.S. economy. If we can just fix a fraction of that.
You have options. Do you So today we've got, it's kind of funny to think about. Well, let's pause there for a second and let me ask you this, Phil. We know healthcare costs are high. We know shopping for healthcare in the U.S. hasn't been anything like shopping for groceries, and it's kind of hard to understand exactly what you're getting, historically speaking. But what about the physicians? How does Deb say this new healthcare system or consumerism-based healthcare would impact them? What are their thoughts?
To that, Shane, Deb says a lot of physicians may not agree with her on some of her statements regarding the healthcare marketplace. But she also says physicians play a more important role than ever before with these consumer-driven changes we are already seeing. Maybe to fix it, we need to so complex. And we think of healthcare
At first.
It does.
It seems like a funny concept, certain categories. It just
Search and shop around. Already starting to do their research. Says people are already. But Deb's why we offer a physician MBA is best for the patient. That's resources, but also what terms of good use of resources. Not only in terms to make really good decisions with business knowledge.
Understand them. That's what our guest, Deb Gordon, who's conducted research on healthcare consumerism, will be talking with us about today. Let's do it. In downtown Indianapolis, groceries, and it's kind of anything like shopping for U.S. hasn't been. No shopping for healthcare in the year. Costs are high. We know healthcare. And let me ask you this, Phil. Let's pause there for a second. It's kind of funny to think about it. So today we've got. You have options. Do you
A fraction of that. If we can just fix of the U.S. economy, 20% represents fixing. It than ever before, more important role. Also says physicians play a. But she also regarding the healthcare marketplace with her on some of her statements may not agree. Deb says a lot of physicians. To that, Shane.
What are their thoughts? Would impact them? Based healthcare system or.
So some people are starting to cut back on their medications, be more conservative with the hospital or doctor visits, because they are looking at healthcare through a market-driven lenses. They realize there's a cost to that. And, the landscape is changing. And Deb says this is because, especially as Americans, we have shopper instincts. We have shoppers. And bringing that to healthcare is going to help align things in a better way. It's so complex. Maybe to fix it, we need to. Excellent. Already seen changes we are all with these consumer-driven.
Well, let's pause there for a second and let me ask you this, Phil. We know healthcare costs are high. We know shopping for healthcare in the U.S. hasn't been anything like shopping for.
For some closing thoughts, Deb suggests the market will eventually win out, and that the healthcare system will have to conform to the consumer. And here's how she explains that. With business knowledge. Physicians may not agree with her on some of her statements regarding the healthcare marketplace, but she also says physicians play a more important role than ever before. Fixing. It represents 20% of the U.S. economy. If we can just fix a fraction of that.
You have options. Do you So today we've got, it's kind of funny to think about it, things arranged by.
We have shopper instinct. Because, especially as Americans, says this is because. And Deb's, the landscape is changing. And to that, they realize there's a cost through a market-driven lenses. Looking at healthcare because they are doctor visits, conservative with the hospital, be more conservative. The good news here, Shane, is that healthcare markets are changing in the direction of patients. Patients making more decisions. Patients owning the purchase decision. Patients having more sense of a control of how they'll get medical care. That doesn't mean that they go to medical school, but this empowerment of the patient, this empowerment of the consumer can go a long way to increasing quality, lowering costs, and increasing access. Things in a better way is going to help align that to healthcare.
Great stuff, Phil. And
20%
healthcare in the United States
than ever
is
before.
very fluid
Also
right
says
now.
physicians
And
play
I know
a
with our
disregard in
physician
healthcare
MBA program
marketplaces.
here on the
May not agree
IUPUI
with
campus,
business knowledge.
we
Claims
will
that.
definitely be talking
conform
about
to the
more
consumer.
of these healthcare
And
changes
that the health Deb
in the future.
suggests the
No
market,
doubt
do
about
we
that.
have shopper
And we do
instinct?
want to thank
Arranged
Deb
by-
Gordon for joining us
today
on the
we've got to have
podcast
options.
today and
Do you
sharing her insight with
We can
us.
just fix it
Definitely
to
took
that.
away a lot from
You know,
this
the landscape
and
is
made me
changing.
think
Says,
about
this is
shopping for
because-
healthcare and a
and
whole new
bringing
light.
to that change. This has been a very
Different
stimulating
labels,
conversation,
Simmons
Shane,
and
about
Phil Powell,
something
a
that
topic
touches
you
everyone.
mentioned what's best
Healthcare.
for the Deb Gordon who
Anyway,
comments on
to our listeners, don't
The
forget,
markets are
you can
changing.
subscribe to
The
the
good news here
podcast
is
wherever you
be
get
more
your
consistent
podcasts.
doctor visits.
And leave us a
Looking at
review on
healthcare
iTunes.
is to
We'd love to
compare
hear how
owning
we're
the-
doing.
the
And we'll be
purchase
back here
distance.
next week giving you some tips on how to avoid
To
being
illustrate
hacked.
Deb's
I know it sounds
analogies.
terrifying,
one of us.
but
We're
there's a
talking to
lot
Phil.
of
It touches
interesting
every
data
single-
behind this and a lot of money that's having to be poured into this after companies are getting
But this
hacked.
empowerment-
So we're going to
that
be talking with our
doesn't mean that
cybersecurity
sense of
expert
control
from the Kelley School of Business, Scott Shackelford. So we'll
things
talk to
in
you
a
all
better
then.
way. Costs and increasing access. Lowering costs.